Hello and welcome back to Myths and Misadventures from the National Hellenic Museum. My name is Cairo and I'm your storyteller. And in this series I share stories about gods, heroes, and monsters from Greek mythology in each episode. And today is part 4, the final part of our discussion of the Olympians. And I'm going to tell you some tales about Hermes and Dionysius. The version of the stories that I will be telling today come from excerpts of D'Ailaire's book of Greek myths by Ingrid and Edgar Parin D'Ailaire. Let's get mythical. Hermes, merriest of the Olympians, was the god of shepherds, travelers, merchants, thieves, and all others who lived by their wits. His mother, Maia, a Titan's daughter, lived in a cave on lofty Mount Selene, a cave so deep that Hera never knew that Maia was one of Zeus's wives. Maia had therefore borne her son Hermes in peace. Hermes was very precocious, even for a god. His mother had hardly wrapped him and put him into a basket when he began to think of mischief. As soon as she had fallen asleep, he wriggled out of his wrappings and tiptoed out of the cave. In the dark of the night, he toddled straight to the pasture where Apollo kept a herd of white cows. Apollo liked music better than cows, and he did not even notice that Hermes had stolen into the pasture and picked out the 50 best cows. To keep Apollo from knowing who had stolen his herd, and which way they had been driven, Hermes slyly wrapped the hooves of the cows with bark to disguise their prints, and tied brooms to their tails so they would erase their own tracks. To confuse Apollo even further, he drove the cows backward out of the pasture and tied bundles of branches to his own little feet, so it looked like a giant had led something into the pasture, but nothing out. He hurried home to Mount Selene and hid the stolen cows in a grove. 2 of them he sacrificed to the 12 Olympian gods, not forgetting to include himself, the 12th. Then he took the entrails of the sacrificed cows, made 7 strings of them, and strung them tautly across an empty tortoise shell. When he plucked the strings, they made lovely music. He had invented the first lyre. Pleased with himself, he hid the lyre under his arm and tiptoed back into the cave. He climbed into his basket, closed his eyes, and pretended to be sound asleep. But he did not fool his mother. She knew what he had been up to. "Shame on you," she said, sneaking out into the night and stealing Apollo's cows. "Why, mother," said Hermes, "I did what I had to do for you and for me. We don't want to live in this dark cave forever. Soon I will be seated on high Olympus as one of the 12 great gods. And you too will live there in glory as my mother." Then he pulled out his lyre and played his mother to sleep with a lullaby. At dawn, Apollo stormed into the cave where Hermes lay in his basket, pretending to be asleep. But Apollo wasn't fooled. An oracle had told him who had stolen his herd, and he jerked little Hermes out of his crib and commanded him to return the cows at once. "How could I have stolen your cows?" Hermes whimpered. "I am only a newborn babe. I don't even know what a cow is. Look for yourself and you can see that there isn't a single cow hidden in this cave." "You are not only a thief, but a liar as well," raged Apollo, and chased Hermes out of the cave and straight to Olympus. All the gods burst out laughing when they saw innocent-looking little Hermes running with a furious Apollo at his heels. "Tell this thief and liar to give back my cows at once," said Apollo to their father, Zeus. "Tell my big brother to stop bullying me. I am a newborn and a helpless infant, and I am not a liar," said Hermes. "There isn't a cow in my mother's cave." "If it's not in the cave, then show Apollo where they are," said Zeus, and hid a smile in his beard. He was proud of both his sons and wanted them to be friends. Hermes had to obey his father, and without any more tricks, he led his brother to the woods where the cows were hidden. Apollo forgave him, but when he counted his cows and found that 2 were missing, his anger flared again. Hermes had expected this and quickly pulled out his lyre and began to play. Apollo listened, spellbound, to the beautiful sounds from the new musical instrument and quite forgot his anger. As the god of music, he must have the lyre, and he offered Hermes his whole herd in exchange for the instrument. Hermes drove a hard bargain, and Apollo had to give him his magic wand as well. From then on, the 2 brothers were the best of friends. Never again did Hermes steal, though he was the god of thieves. He never told a lie, but he didn't always tell the whole truth. His mother, Maia, had no further reasons to be ashamed of him. As the mother of one of the 12 great Olympians, she moved up with him to the glory of Olympus. Zeus was so delighted with Hermes' ready wit that he made him the herald of the gods. He gave him a golden hat with wings, a pair of winged sandals, and a cape under which he could hide his magic tricks. In a flash he could move from place to place. He put glib words on the tongues of politicians, and helped merchants close good bargains. He was as popular among mortals as he was among the gods. Even Hera was fond of him. Hermes also guided those who set off on their last voyage. He touched the eyes of a dying man with a magic wand and led him down to Hades in the underworld. Dionysus. Dionysus, the god of wine, was the youngest of the Olympians. He was the only one of the 12 great gods whose mother was a mortal. His father was Zeus himself. Jealous Hera hated his mother, the beautiful princess Semele, and one day when Zeus was away, the goddess disguised herself as an old crone and went to visit her. She talked about this and about that, pretending to be very friendly. And then she asked why Semele's husband was not at home and the kind of man he might be. "He is nobody less than mighty Zeus," Semele said proudly. "How can you be so sure about that?" said the old woman. "I know many husbands who claim to be the lord of all creation. Do you have any proof that he really is who he says he is? If I were you, I would ask him to show himself in all his splendor." Then she went away, and Semele was left alone, wondering. When Zeus returned, Semele asked him to grant her a wish. Zeus, who loved her dearly, swore by the river Styx to fulfill any wish that she might have. "Then show yourself in all your splendor," said Semele. Zeus begged her to change her wish, for he knew that no mortal eyes could bear the sight of him when he revealed himself as the flashing thunder god, 100 times brighter than the sun. But Hera had planted the seed of suspicion so deep in Semele's heart, she refused to change her wish. Zeus had to keep his promise, for he had sworn by the river Styx, the most solemn oath of all the gods. He joined together the smallest storm clouds he could find, chose his tiniest lightning bolt, and showed himself to Semele as the mighty thunder god. Even so, he was so brilliant that Semele caught fire and burned to cinders. Zeus could do nothing to save her. She went down to Hades as a fluttering ghost. Zeus barely managed to rescue her unborn son, and sewed him under the skin of his own leg, and when the child was ready to be born, he sprang forth as the immortal god, Dionysius. Zeus knew well enough who was the cause of Semele's death, and he gave her little son to Hermes and told him to hide the boy from Hera. Hermes carried Dionysus to the faraway valley of Nysa, and left him in the care of a band of Maenads, the nymphs of the valley. There Dionysus grew up with tigers and leopards for playmates. Large bunches of purple grapes grew on the sunny slope of the valley of Nysa, and in time Dionysus invented the making of wine from their juice. As a young and beautiful god, he dressed in flowing robes of royal purple. He went out into the world to teach men how to make wine. The Maenads went with him, and so did the leopards and tigers, and ever more followers joined him. Wherever he went, he was worshipped as a new god, and his father, Zeus, watched him with pleasure. Dionysus returned to Greece and traveled from island to island teaching the making of wine. One day, as he was sleeping alone on a beach, a pirate ship sailed by. When the pirates saw the richly clad youth, they thought he was a prince, and carried him off to their ship to hold him for ransom. He did not wake from his heavy slumber till the ship was far out at sea. With gentle words, he tried to persuade the pirates to take him back. He was not a prince, he said. He was the god of wine, and his riches were not of this world. The pirates laughed scornfully and sailed on, paying him no heed. Suddenly their laughter died, for out of the sea sprouted vines loaded with grapes. They grew, twining around the orbs, winding up the mast, and spreading over the whole ship as though it were an arbor. Blood-red wine dripped down the sail, and the air was filled with the sound of roaring tigers and braying asses. Dionysus himself seemed to grow till he filled the ship with his glory. Horrified, the sailors threw themselves into the sea, but they did not drown, for Dionysus was a kind god. He changed them into dolphins, and that is why dolphins are the most human of all creatures that live in the ocean. Dionysus had brought much joy to mankind, and Zeus decided the time had come to give him a golden throne on Olympus. Hera rose in anger and said she refused to share the hall with the son of a mortal woman, but Zeus pounded his indomitable fist, and Hera sat silent. There were only 12 thrones in the hall, so kind Hestia quietly rose from hers and said Dionysus could have it. Her place was at the hearth, she said. She needed no throne. Before seating himself on his throne, Dionysus asked to see his mother, for whom he had always longed. Zeus not only permitted him to see her, but let him go down to Hades and bring her up to the glory of Olympus, for she was now the mother of one of the great gods. Happily, Dionysius entered the hall and seated himself on his golden throne. The air was filled with music of flutes and tambourines. Never had there been such a din and merriment on Olympus. Zeus looked around with great content, and beckoned his cupbearer, Ganymede, bidding him to fill the golden goblets with sweet nectar. We have now officially covered all 12 of the great Olympians here at Myths and Misadventures, so I'm excited to move our focus a little more into some of the lesser gods and mortals coming up soon. But don't fret, the Olympians keep showing up. They are certainly a meddlesome bunch, and they will continue to be featured in stories. But now you know where most of them come from. I hope that I captured your imagination today, and I look forward to sharing another story from Greek mythology with you soon. Until next time.